Hey, what's up guys? In this ultimate guide I'm going to talk about everything that goes into how to play successionlahn and to be able to do this in an extremely good way. Before we go into it, I appreciate it if everyone subscribe to the YouTube channel, give the video a like, make sure to watch throughout the whole video to get a better and full understanding of the class. The support means a lot to me as a content creator to keep on going, and it keeps on delivering high quality videos such as these. Let's get into it. Firstly, we are going to talk about the basics of the successionlahn. I'll show some skills that you could want to lock, how to buff up with the class, and how to DP down monsters, how to use the Salpuri engage. Later I will talk a little bit about the crystals you want to use in some of the grind spots. I'll show some beginner crystal examples, and also the best in slot that you want to aim for going into the endgame. Note that the crystal build should always be set up depending on where you grind and what type of gear you're currently running. The only reason I'm going into this is to teach new players the basics on setting up these builds. After this, we can take a look at the artifacts and the type of Lightstone setup that you want to be running as a beginner player and also eventually going into endgame. Note also here that depending on where you grind, you want to use different Lightstone setups. Also note that throughout time we are going to get new crystals, artifacts and Lightstones, so these might change with time in the future. We are then going to go into how to move around with the successionlahn. I'll illustrate and show how to use the mobility skills. Firstly, just the basics pack-to-pack movement, but also some longer distance mobilities. Once you know how to move around, we can then go into the add-ons. Explaining these are similar to how to set up your crystal and lightstone build. Your add-on setup can be different for different grind spots. I personally use a add-on build that is suitable for most places, but then I also have the other crystals to swap more specifically depending on where I'm grinding. Later we are going to go into the combo, showing how to set it up and leading into examples. Also explaining how you can continue DPS output in combination with skill cancels and skill cooldowns. Firstly we look at the battle arena dummies, and later we go into real examples grinding. After this we're going to talk about skill cancels. I will show you how and why to do these and what the result of that could be. Lastly, I'm going to mention a few ending words that of course everyone would love to hear. So let's go into the basics. Talking about the gameplay of the successionlahn, how you usually play it is you're always flowing around, spinning, attacking, focusing on back attacks and avoiding damage, either by repositioning around the monsters or being slightly away from them when attacking. Because the Lahn is so squishy, you need to stay away from damage, and if it's either by repositioning or forward guarding for DPS output. Luckily, successionlahn right now has a bunch of DPS output, so many times you will kill the monsters fast and don't need to worry too much about avoiding the damage all the time. Making sure you are always buffed up and debuffing the monsters helps out a lot. As a last note, it is important to mention that Lahn's stamina is very bad, and many times at different grind spots you have to side dash for iframes to not get hit. It's very important that you learn how to sustain your stamina while grinding and use the stamina required skills at the right times. Let's explain some of the utilities that you want to get familiar with. You want to always buff up before engaging and even throughout the combo whenever the skill buffs are disappearing. Using the stately dignity skill buff whenever you don't have it to get the attack speed 18% for 15 seconds and movement speed 5% for 15 seconds. You want to use stately dignity before or even in the middle of the combo whenever is necessary. It also works as an aggro, so more monsters will get drawn to you. After this, using the dismemberment skill gives you the AP buff 12 AP for 10 seconds. Another attack speed buff you get is from the pendulum kick, 18% for 5 seconds. That is perfectly set up in the combo that you will see later. In short, you always want to remain being buffed up with these skills at all times. Just make sure you don't die to incoming damage because you have to buff up. Salpuri is Successionlahn's most powerful skill, and you want to use this at all times. The reason you want to use this skill is to get the tier 3 add-on from it that lasts around 20 seconds. Note that you will have to hit the monsters to get the add-on effect. Throwing it out on as many monsters as you can is a positive thing, because it also has a DP down skill debuff. This means that whenever you attack a monster with a skill DP debuff, you can also hit it with a DP down add-on, and then it gets double DP down. You can also use the Salpuri as a mobility engage. Whenever using Furious Chase and then going into Salpuri Shift Q, you then do an extra jump forward. This is a very good, efficient way of moving around pack to pack grinding. In short, if you notice that your add-on buffs from Salpuri is depleted, or if you can throw out Salpuri, then do it. Always make sure you play with these skills add-ons. I personally have this skill in the hotbar, so it's easier for me to see the cooldown, and also whenever I just want to throw out the skill at the pack that I'm currently at. If I want to move into another pack, you have to do the Furious Chase into Shift Q Salpuri, otherwise it doesn't work. If you do not hit the monsters with the Salpuri to get the DP down, then don't worry, because you can always use the Bleeding Hearts to DP down the monsters. Throw this out there whenever you fight tankier monsters that you want to put that extra DP down on. Using Phoenix Chase whenever you need extra mobility, I put this in the hotbar and I usually use it in combination with Furious Chase, going into Phoenix Chase into the monsters. Let's talk about what skills to lock. In my opinion, there's not really any skills that you would have to lock unless you really want to. It's always important to lock the evasion skill so you don't roll around if you run out of stamina. I also made sure to lock the crit hit rate C buff, but you don't really need to do this either because the attack speed buff is the one that you want to have and is the one that gets prioritized anyway. Talking about which C buff to use, let's get into it. When it comes to the 100% C buff, I would recommend in most situations to throw this out there with the pendulum kick skill. And always try to skill cancel this using Shift A or D, moving to the side. In rare situations, pressing C if you are in a safe distance away from the monster so you don't die. When it comes to what C buff you want to use, as I previously mentioned, you want to right now use the attack speed one because you already get all of the crit hit rate from the Salpuri skill. That's most of the basic stuff. Let's get into what type of crystals that you could want to be using and how you should think about crystal setups. Generally about crystals on the Lahn. As for PVE, 95% of the grind is about maximizing DPS output. In late game grind, it could be more important at places like Addons to invest in some defensive crystals. And this is because of the very big AoEs that you sometimes can't avoid. In a lot of grind spots where the monsters CC your characters, you have to adjust to this. And that means that you might have to invest in resist crystals. So just like anything, you have to set up your crystals accordingly to your gear and depending on where you grind. I will show an example of what a beginner player might want to invest into, and also show my endgame PVE build for places to give you an idea of how these crystal setup works. Note again that these crystals or grind spots or mechanics in the game could change, and this is not like a permanent build or anything. The reason why I'm showing this is for you to get an idea how to think about when to set up the crystal build. So this is how I would set up a crystal build for newer players. Something that is affordable and efficient. Later you always want to change some of these out for better ones in due time. As mentioned earlier, you don't need to focus on any defensive crystals in the early gameplay. If you're lacking gear score to grind a grind spot, you shouldn't really grind there, unless you're really only doing it for the funsies. There is always better alternatives if you can grind more efficiently. Note that you can't use all crystal slots in the beginning, because you haven't acquired the Garmoth Heart yet to put in a weapon. You can right now only put the Garmoth Heart in the Awakening and the sub-weapon to give you 2 extra crystal slots, but usually this is something that players invest in a little bit later. Unless you get lucky at Garmoth. Moving into endgame crystal builds, it looks something like this. Depending on where I grind, you need to have different setups for most efficiency. For places that don't CC my character or places that are not that dangerous, I go straight 100% DPS. Also, in a few other grind spots where the monsters are a little bit slower, I could use backattack damage to go a little bit over the cap, doing a little bit more DPS output. For places where I need to be a little bit more tanky, for example Lantern Addons, I play something like this. Also to throw in some CC resist right there. In a place like Thornwood Lantern, I would use a different build to counter the CC but to remain having a high DPS output on the crystals. Same thing in the crypt, it can look something like this. To make sure that I have accuracy hitting the monsters with a high DPS output, but also not to get stunned all the time. I don't really run 100% resist here in the crypt because I'm not dying if they CC me. If you were to die at any of the places because you get CC'd, you have to make sure that you want to play with a lot of resist, or you need to play like a god gamer and never get CC'd. As a last crystal build, I also want to show one with human damage, and this is how I would set it up. Hopefully these examples give you an idea of how to build crystal setups in BDO. Let's take a look at the artifacts and the Lightstones. Before going into endgame, you can just get the regular monster AP artifact for PVE. As a new player, you don't need to go into it too deep in the beginning. Just get some monster AP Lightstone combos with your monster AP artifact, and that should be good for a long time. Eventually moving into mid-game, you want to invest in something a little bit more efficient. As a Lahn, I would invest in all-out attack Lightstone combo. This Lightstone combo is all around the best in slot at most of the places, because you're not capping out. Whenever getting enough gear to be close to endgame, that means sometimes that you'll be capping out at a lot of these places. And because of that reason, moving into endgame, you want to invest in various specific monster AP Lightstones. So what that really means is, if you're fighting human monsters, you want to have human damage. If you're fighting Kama Sylvia monsters, you want to have Kama damage, demi-human monster, demi-human damage, monster type, all-out attack is the best one. Also remember the thing I said before about back attack. Even here using Vicious Shadow can sometimes be better for DPS output if you can do a lot of back attack. This is for all of the places where you're capping out on. Moving into late mid-game and early endgame, you want to invest in Kabua's artifacts. Again, when it comes to artifact and Lightstones on the Lahn for PvE, it's all about DPS output. Let's check on the successionlahn's mobility. Successionlahn is a very flowy class that moves around, seemingly with the skills twirling and flying around. Usually you would have to move around with a Furious Chase. Tapping Furious Chase in the right moments makes it spammable until your stamina runs out. Note that you have to press R and B at the right time here, and not too fast, otherwise it goes into another skill. Sometimes you can also throw in a Phoenix Chase into the mix. You would have to hotbar this skill. As mentioned before, you can also use the Salpari going into Salpari engage, using Furious Chase into Salpari. Your other mobility skills is to fly pack to pack for longer distances. regular forward F for shorter glide. If you need longer flight between the packs, you can extend this forward F into shift flight. For longer extension, repress forward F for gliding again. Note that the cooldown for the second flight is a very long cooldown. There are several ways of getting out of the flight animation. If you want to land straight down, LMB is an option. Note that you can flow into fatal attraction very quickly if you do this. Second way to do it is to press RMB whenever you have a monster target to glide forward too quickly. These are the two ways that I do it. No need to use any other skills whenever you want to go out of the flight. As a bonus, I'm going to show you a few Salpuri engages flying and gliding. That is all of the mobilities you want to know about. Let's check out the add-ons. Important for the Lahn's add-on build is that you put monster damage, crit hit rate, attack speed and DP down in the beginning of the combo, following up with accuracy and evasion down if needed, and then specific damage modifier like crit damage, back attack or down attack. These are the add-ons that I'm playing with most of the times. For new players in the beginning you might not need to have that much accuracy, so taking a quick look if you need to or if you don't need to, depending on where you grind, can be very good. You can also check this by either turning on the miss option in settings, or you can use garmoth.com to enter your gear in and see what you're missing. I personally don't want to swap add-ons every single time I go to another place. And to be honest, you don't really need to for most places. Just make sure that you have sufficient accuracy. For places like the crypt where you do back attack and down attack, you could want to play with both, so this would be an alternative. You also want some accuracy and evasion down on monsters in some of the endgame places, so that's another thing that you have to see with your build if you're missing a lot of these important stats. Just like anything when it comes to builds, you have to do with what you have and where you play. It can be a little bit different depending on the class, build and grind spot when it comes to how you want to set up your add-ons. Note that if you want to play more efficiently in grind spots where, for example, you knock down the monsters, you need to replace the back attack with down attack, something looking like this. Lastly, if you can't knock down the monsters, you could want to replace these with back attack, looking something like this. Okay, so let me explain and take a look at the combo. This is how the combo looks like. You always need to buff up using the skill buffs in combination to aggroing monsters with Q, Stately Dignity, going into sideways AD RMB, Dismemberment, for AP up buff. You then always want to use the Salpuri for activating the add-ons, preferably on as many monsters as possible because it also has a DP down skill debuff. After this, you just need to focus on the main combo for DPS output. Note that in and between the combo you always want to remain being buffed up, so using Stately Dignity with aggro and dismemberment even mid-combo is okay. Even throwing out Salpuri in the middle of the combo is very good for upkeeping add-on buffs. Just make sure you follow up the combo in the chain. Now, I do also want to mention that successionlahn is a little bit faster than what it used to be, so depending on the attack speed buffs, and if you have to reposition or skill cancel, you might have to fill out the combo with SLMB Crescent Barrage, going into Shift LMB Fatal Attraction. Doing this is also very good for upkeeping DPS values, and I would usually do it all the time, even if I don't skill cancel. After the Blade Dance, I would always reposition into Crescent Barrage doing the back attack on the monsters. Also make sure that you always use the E buff and the C buff, either by kicking with F or pressing C. Also good to know is that the Fatal Attraction is a forward guard and can be used whenever for protective means. You could try to time in the kick, but it has gaps in it, so I wouldn't really recommend kicking for forward guarding unless PA fixes the gaps. If anything, you can always side dash for iframes and avoid all of the damage as long as you have stamina. Let me show you guys a few examples how the combo looks like, both in battle arena and grinding various grind spots. Most of the skills are cancelable on the Successionlahn, therefore it is easier to mention the ones that aren't. Fatal Attraction is one of the skills that you have to play through the animation. Usually is okay because the Fatal Attraction has a forward guard on it. Sometimes whenever you want to push out that SLMB Crescent Barrage skill for more DPS or HP on hits, you can't cancel that in the beginning of the skill. Something that I died to a few times actually, trying to maintain damage and healing up, so be very cautious of this. The way that you can skill cancel on almost all skills is to sideways shift A or D in the middle of any skills. You could also back jump, but usually that is not a good idea because you get hit in the beginning of the back jump moving into iframes. There is two reasons why you want to skill cancel. Number one, you want to avoid damage and not die. Number two, you want to reposition to do more DPS. You can luckily do these two things together. By avoiding damage, you want to reposition, usually behind the monster, to do more back attack damage. In rare occasions there can be a third alternative, which is to iframe or forward guard monster AoE mechanics entirely. Note, as mentioned, going through the combo whenever you do cancel a skill, you speed up the combo chain rotation, meaning you have to fill it out to avoid standing still. Usually you can fix this by holding SLMB Crescent Barrage into Fatal Attraction, rebuffing and using Salpuri. At this moment you should have all of the skill cooldowns reset and you can then rotate the combo again. Lastly, let me throw out some ending words. Successionlahn is a very cool class. It feels good, it looks good, spinning around, and the fact that you can fly around on the class makes it all the better. It's a very simple class, to get into and is very efficient DPS wise in its current state. Even though in PVE it has so much damage output, it is lacking a lot in tankiness, and sometimes even in stamina because of its squishiness. Stamina and squishiness correlates into the same thing here, where you have to avoid the damage by not getting hit, so you use the stamina to move around, avoiding the attacks. If there is anything to do with the class moving forward, and especially when it comes to new endgame content in the future, it has to be more tanky to get ready for these. I would love for you guys to subscribe to the YouTube channel, give the video a like, and comment anything in the comment section below. What do you think about the successionlahn? Also make sure to check out whenever we stream on Twitch, usually every day, on twitch.tv/TheChilliers. Everything helps out and it motivates me to keep on going. We usually upload videos on YouTube every other day, sometimes even multiple videos in one day. That is all for the moment. Thank you everyone for your loyal support. It means a lot to me. Let's keep on hammering together and never forget to have fun. See you guys in the next one.